Think about the last time you genuinely tried. You were in the conversation. You were present. You brought something real, a thought, an observation, a question that had been sitting in the back of your mind for days, and you put it out there into the space between you and another person. And they looked at you like you'd spoken in a foreign language. Not hostile, not cruel, just blank. And then they pivoted to something easier, something lighter, something that didn't require them to go anywhere uncomfortable. And in that moment, something in you closed, quietly, without ceremony, like a door swinging shut on its own. If you know that feeling, if it has happened enough times that you've stopped trying as hard, stopped bringing the real things, started performing a version of yourself that fits more easily into the rooms you're forced to occupy, then this video is going to hit you somewhere deep. Because what most people call avoidance, what therapists want to label and fix, what well-meaning friends want to coach you out of, Arthur Schopenhauer called something else entirely. He called it intelligence recognizing its own limits. And in a world that pathologizes any deviation from constant social engagement, that reframe is not just refreshing, it is liberating. But liberation doesn't come cheap. What Schopenhauer reveals about why intelligent people withdraw from others is not a comfortable truth, it's a brutal one. And by the end of this video, you'll understand not just why you avoid people, but why, in many cases, you should. This is not permission to give up on humanity. This is permission to finally be honest about it.
Let's begin with something that will make most people deeply uncomfortable. Most human conversation is not communication, it is noise management. Think about the last 10 conversations you had that weren't strictly functional, not ordering coffee, not asking about a meeting time, but actual social exchange. How many of those conversations moved something? How many of them ended with you understanding something you didn't before, feeling genuinely seen, or thinking in a direction you wouldn't have found alone? Be honest. Schopenhauer was brutally, almost offensively direct on this point. He wrote, "To be alone is the fate of all great minds, a fate deplored at times, but still always chosen as the less grievous of two evils." Read that carefully. Not chosen because solitude is pleasant, chosen because the alternative, the company of people who cannot follow you, is worse. This is not idealism. This is the cold calculus of a man who spent decades watching humans interact and concluded that most of what passes for connection is, at best, mutual distraction, and at worst, a slow erosion of the self. Here is the mechanism. When you are in conversation with someone whose mind operates at a fundamentally different frequency than yours, one of two things happens. Either you translate yourself, you compress, simplify, soften, edit until what you're saying is accessible to them. And in that translation, something is always lost, the nuance, the real point, the thing that actually mattered. Or you don't translate. You speak plainly from where you actually are, and you watch it fail to land. You watch eyes glaze, attention drift, the conversation redirect towards safer territory. Both outcomes have the same result. You were not there. A version of you was there, but the actual you, the thinking, questioning, restless mind that never fully turns off, stayed home. This is what Schopenhauer meant by the fate of the great mind. Not loneliness as passive suffering, loneliness as the inevitable byproduct of operating at a level most people around you simply cannot reach. And this is where the self-help industrial complex fails you completely. It hands you scripts for vulnerability. It tells you to open up. It reframes your withdrawal as fear, as a wound to be healed, a wall to be dismantled. But what if the wall isn't fear? What if it's discernment? What if you have learned through enough failed attempts, enough closed doors, enough conversations that went nowhere, that the issue is not your inability to connect, but the rarity of people worth fully connecting with? Modern psychology's concept of social battery scratches the surface of this. Introverts recharge alone, extroverts recharge socially. Fine. But Schopenhauer goes further. He isn't describing an energy management system. He's describing a perceptual reality. The intelligent person doesn't avoid people because they're tired. They avoid people because they can see, clearly, accurately, without self-deception, that most of what's on offer isn't worth the cost of showing up. That is not a disorder. That is perception.
Here's something nobody says out loud. Social interaction for a certain kind of mind is not neutral. It is not simply pleasant or unpleasant based on how the conversation goes. It carries a cost that has nothing to do with the conversation itself, a tax levied not on your time, but on your clarity. Every social performance requires the suppression of authentic thought. You are, in any given gathering, simultaneously tracking the emotional temperature of the room, managing others' perceptions of you, translating your actual views into something socially acceptable, monitoring your tone, your facial expressions, the pacing of your speech, all while trying to think. For someone whose primary mode of being is interior, whose real life happens in the mind, this is not multitasking, it is interruption. And every minute of it is a minute not spent in the place where you actually do your best work. Schopenhauer described the will, the blind biological force that drives all human behavior, as fundamentally insatiable. Every desire satisfied creates the immediate space for a new desire. Every social approval earned must be continually re-earned. The performance never ends because the will never rests. He wrote, "The life of every individual, viewed as a whole and in general, and when only its most significant features are emphasized, is really a tragedy, but gone through in detail, it has the character of a comedy." What he's describing is the absurdity of the performance itself. We spend enormous energy managing tiny moments, worrying about how we came across, replaying a comment made at dinner, constructing the right response to a message we received 3 days ago. All of it in service of maintaining a social image that exists only in other people's heads, an image they are barely paying attention to because they are too busy managing their own. This is the tax. And for most people, it's invisible because they've been paying it so long they've forgotten what it felt like not to. But the intelligent mind, the mind that has at some point caught a glimpse of what it can do when left undisturbed, feels the tax acutely because it knows what the alternative is. It knows what happens when the performance stops, when the room goes quiet, when the obligation to manage others' experience lifts. The thoughts come, real thoughts, connected, deep, generative, the kind of thinking that doesn't happen on command, but emerges slowly from sustained silence. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called this state flow, complete absorption in a task, free from self-consciousness, producing the highest quality of cognitive output. His research found that flow states are almost universally disrupted by social interaction. The presence of others, even people we love, redirects cognitive resources away from depth and toward performance. Schopenhauer understood this intuitively a century before the research. He didn't call it flow. He called it the only life worth living. The question is whether you've given yourself permission to protect it.
Let's go deeper than introversion, deeper than social battery, deeper than personality type. Because the real reason intelligent people withdraw from others isn't that they find socializing tiring, it's that they find most of it dishonest. And sustained exposure to dishonesty, even low-stakes, socially lubricated, no one means any harm dishonesty, is genuinely exhausting for a mind calibrated for truth. Here is what the average social interaction actually contains. A person presents a version of themselves optimized for the current audience. They state opinions they haven't fully examined because the opinions are socially expected of them. They express enthusiasm they don't feel, agreement they don't hold, interest they're performing rather than experiencing. And they expect you to do the same. The entire exchange is a mutual theater of managed impressions, and as long as everyone plays their role, the performance is called connection. Schopenhauer saw through this with ruthless clarity. He wrote, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." 3/4, not a small adjustment, not a rounding of edges, a fundamental self-abandonment that most people undertake so automatically, so completely, so early in life that they can no longer locate what was given up. The intelligent person, almost by definition, has not made this trade completely. They retained too much of their interior life. They asked too many questions that didn't have socially acceptable answers. They noticed too many things that the room preferred not to notice. And so they arrived at adulthood carrying more of themselves than most people and finding, repeatedly, that this is not an advantage in most social environments. It is an isolation sentence. Because authenticity, real authenticity, not the curated vulnerability that passes for it on social media, creates friction. The person who says what they actually think, who refuses to perform enthusiasm they don't feel, who will not pretend to be engaged when they're not, this person makes others uncomfortable, not through cruelty, simply through honesty. And so the intelligent person faces a choice that is presented as a pathology. Stop being honest, perform better, and belong. Or keep being honest, perform worse, and be alone. Most self-help content will tell you there's a third option, that the answer is to find your tribe, to locate the rare others who can meet you where you are, to not give up on connection. And they're not wrong, but they're skipping something crucial. Before you can find your tribe, you have to stop pretending that the people currently in your life are it. And that act of seeing clearly, without cruelty, but without self-deception, of acknowledging that most of the connection you've been maintaining is performance rather than contact, is one of the most uncomfortable things a person can do. Schopenhauer didn't flinch from it. Neither should you.
Now we go to the root. Because everything we've discussed, the noise, the tax, the dishonesty, is visible at the surface. But underneath the social problem is a biological one. And until you understand the biology, the avoidance will continue to feel like a choice when it is, in large part, a response to something much older and much more fundamental than personality. Schopenhauer's central philosophical insight, the concept he spent his entire career building and defending, is the idea of the will. Not human will, not free will, not the will to power, the will, capital W, the blind, purposeless, insatiable biological drive that underlies all life. The force that makes you hungry, makes you desire, makes you strive, makes you fear death, even when you know intellectually it is coming. The will does not care about your happiness, it cares about its own continuation. And it manufactures want after want after want to keep you in motion, to keep you reaching, to prevent you from ever arriving anywhere that might allow it to stop. He wrote, "All wanting comes from need, from deficiency, from suffering. Satisfaction puts an end to suffering, but for each wish fulfilled, 10 at least are denied. 10 denied for each fulfilled. That is the math. That is the structure. You are not failing at satisfaction. Satisfaction is not the design."
Now here is where it connects to avoidance. The social environment is, from the will's perspective, a maximum yield feeding ground. Every social interaction is saturated with micro-desires, the desire to be liked, to be admired, to be understood, to be chosen, to be preferred. And for each of these desires, the social world delivers just enough reward to keep you reaching, just enough approval to keep you seeking, without ever quite delivering the real thing. You leave a party feeling vaguely dissatisfied. You leave a conversation feeling like something real was almost said but never quite arrived. You feel the closeness approaching and then watch it dissolve back into performance. This is not bad luck. This is the structure. The intelligent person, the person with sufficient self-awareness to observe their own interior, begins to recognize this pattern. And at some point, the recognition is complete enough that withdrawal becomes not avoidance, but efficiency. Why enter a system designed to generate desire without satisfaction? Why pay the social tax for a return that never fully materializes? Now here is where it connects to avoidance. Schopenhauer's answer, the path he actually advocated, was not nihilism. It was aesthetic contemplation and philosophical reflection, states that interrupt the will, moments where the perpetual wanting pauses and something else becomes possible. Music, literature, deep thought, the company of ideas. These are not substitutes for human connection. They are, for certain minds, their superiors. They deliver what most human interaction promises and rarely provides: the sensation of being met, of encountering something that understands you, not partially, not with an agenda, but fully and without cost. That's not avoidance. That's preference, earned through experience.
This is the chapter where the distinction matters most. Because everything up to this point could be read as an elaborate justification for withdrawal, a philosophical permission slip for giving up on people entirely. That is not what Schopenhauer offers, and it is not what this video is offering. There is a difference, a crucial, life-defining difference between avoidance rooted in fear and distance chosen from clarity. And if you don't know which one is operating in you, everything that follows will be built on the wrong foundation. Avoidance rooted in fear looks like this. You withdraw from people because contact feels dangerous, because you have been hurt enough times that connection now reads as threat, because the vulnerability required to be truly known feels like too much exposure. This is real. It is common, and it requires not philosophical acceptance, but genuine healing. Distance chosen from clarity looks like this. You have tried. You have brought yourself to the table repeatedly across many years and many people. You have been honest about what you need from connection, and you have observed with increasing precision that most of what's on offer does not meet that standard. Not because people are bad, because the match is genuinely rare. Schopenhauer was clear on this distinction. He wrote, "The doctor sees all the weakness of mankind, the lawyer all the wickedness, the theologian all the stupidity. The philosopher sees the whole, and withdraws not from hatred, but from understanding." Not from hatred, from understanding. So here is the question you need to sit with honestly. Which is it for you? If it's fear, if the people you're avoiding are people you actually want to be close to but have retreated from because of pain, then Schopenhauer is not your answer today. Find someone to work through the pain with. That's the first work. But if it's clarity, if the withdrawal is from people who have demonstrated reliably that they cannot offer what you genuinely need, then Schopenhauer is exactly right. Stop apologizing for it. Stop trying to fix it. Stop letting the social pressure to perform closeness you don't feel drive you back into rooms that leave you emptier than before. What does the alternative actually look like? It looks like radical selectivity. It means accepting that for someone like you, meaningful connection is rare, and that this rarity is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be honored. One conversation that reaches something true is worth more than a year of polished performance. It means investing your social energy, which is finite and genuinely costly, only where there is evidence of real return. Not potential, not hope, evidence. It means being willing to sit in the silence between authentic connections without filling it with inferior substitutes. Because that silence, properly inhabited, is not emptiness. It is the sound of your actual life, proceeding without interruption.
We've arrived at the hardest part. Not the hardest intellectually. Everything we've covered is, in a certain light, obvious. Once you see it clearly, you wonder how you didn't see it before. The hardest part is the acceptance, not of a concept, of a life. Because what Schopenhauer is ultimately asking you to do, what this entire framework points toward, is to stop grieving a version of your social life that was never going to exist. Most intelligent people who struggle with avoidance are not struggling with people. They are struggling with the gap between what connection could theoretically be and what it actually, consistently, demonstrably is. They have an interior image of deep communion, of being fully known by another person, of conversations that go somewhere real, of relationships built on genuine understanding rather than mutual performance. And they keep measuring their actual relationships against that image, and the actual relationships keep falling short, and the gap creates grief. Schopenhauer would say, stop grieving the gap. Close it, not by lowering the standard, but by accepting the arithmetic. Deep connection is rare. It exists, he is not denying that, but it is rare in the precise mathematical sense, uncommon enough that most of the people you will ever meet will not be candidates for it. And the sooner you accept that, fully, without resentment, without the sustained low-grade hope that the next conversation will be different, the sooner you can stop being disappointed by what people aren't and start receiving what they actually are. Because here is the thing Schopenhauer knew that most philosophers miss. Even ordinary people, people who cannot follow you into depth, carry something worth receiving. Warmth, humor, presence. The simple fact of another conscious being navigating the same impossible existence you are, with the same will driving them toward wanting and away from rest. Compassion becomes possible when you stop demanding more than someone can give. Not tolerance, not endurance, actual compassion, the kind that doesn't require the other person to change. He wrote, "Compassion is the basis of all morality." And compassion requires accurate perception. You cannot genuinely feel for someone you are constantly measuring against a standard they were never going to meet. This is the liberation, not freedom from other people, freedom from the version of other people that only ever existed in your expectations. Accept it. Most people will never reach you in the places you most need to be reached. Accept it. Accept it. Most gatherings will cost more than they return. Accept it. Accept it. The connection you are capable of is rare enough that protecting your interior life is not selfishness. It is stewardship. Accept it. And in that acceptance, clear-eyed, resentment-free, grounded in philosophical understanding rather than bitterness, something shifts. You stop avoiding. You start choosing. There is a world of difference.
Here is what all of this has been circling. The brutal reason intelligent people avoid others is not what most people assume. It's not arrogance. It's not damage. It's not fear dressed up in philosophical clothing. It is this. They have paid enough attention to know the difference between contact and connection, between proximity and presence.
between conversation and communion. And once you know that difference, once you have experienced real connection, even briefly, even once, everything that is not that becomes very difficult to pretend is enough. Most people never develop this sensitivity. They move through social life in a state of comfortable approximation, close enough to connection that the hunger for the real thing never fully wakes up. They are not worse for this. In many ways, they are luckier. The will's trap is gentler when you can't see its mechanism clearly. But you can see it. You have been seeing it, probably for most of your life, and you have been made to feel that this seeing is the problem, that if you could just want what others want, connect the way others connect, be satisfied by what satisfies others, everything would be easier. Schopenhauer offers the only honest response to that. You were not built for easier. You were built for truer. The intelligent person who withdraws is not giving up. They are refusing to give up, refusing to accept the counterfeit in place of the real, refusing to call performance connection, to call proximity intimacy, to call noise meaning. That refusal carries a cost. The cost is visible. Fewer relationships, more solitude, the occasional accusation of coldness from people who can't understand what you're actually doing. What is less visible is what the refusal protects. An interior life that has not been bartered for approval. A capacity for genuine connection, rare but real, that has been preserved rather than depleted. Schopenhauer didn't promise you a full room. He promised you a full self. You were never broken. You were just too honest for the room you were put in.
If this video found something real in you, if it named the thing you've been defending without having the language for it, don't rush to share it. Don't rush to perform the insight. Sit with it. Let it settle. That's the whole practice. And if this video reached something true, write in the comments, "It made sense to me." No explanation, no summary, no proof of comprehension, just those 5 words. You'll know why they're enough. If you want to go further into Schopenhauer's will, into what it means to live an honest life in a world optimized for performance, into the philosophers who refuse to make the comfortable trade, subscribe. We go deeper every week. The room doesn't have to be full. It has to be real.